Hey guys, this is Jackson, just recording this little intro to let you know that this episode, episode 16, is the first episode available on YouTube, but if you'd like to hear the first 15, they're available on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and of course, our website. I'll link all of that down below for your listening convenience, and from now on, episodes will also be posted to YouTube, so that's just one more platform for you to listen on. On this channel, we'll also be doing video reviews, so keep an eye out for that. But without further ado, thanks for listening, and let's get to the podcast.
Welcome to episode 16 of the Father and Son Watch Horror Movies podcast. I'm your co-host, Matt Rawlings, aka Pastor Matt, aka the Father, and I'm joined as always by my trusty co-host,
Jackson, the son, and I think I'll just let the clown keep that paper boat. Thanks. Ain't no way I'm reaching my hand in that storm drain.
Exactly. Oh man, see, horror movies teach you things.
Mm-hmm.
We learn from them.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't guessed, today we are covering It from 2017 and It Chapter 2 from 2019. Now, we are a spoiler podcast. We spoil the films we cover, so be warned. We were scheduled to have a couple guests on today, but apparently they couldn't make it, and so we apologize for that, but hopefully we'll have some guests on the next time. But before we get going, I need to address something. We finished up our Friday 13th franchise review, and during it, I gave a shout out to Jay of the Dead's new podcast, Horror Movie Weekly, which he does with Lady Phantom and Bill Chete. I called out Bill for nitpicking Halloween 2018. Lady Phantom did as well, but he's the guy, Bill, who defended Friday 13th Jason Takes Manhattan on H&P. So I said I thought that was a little weird that, you know, he finds all this fault with Halloween 2018 for him having all these goofs and logical errors, but he defends a zombie serial killer coming out of the water, climbing onto a ship that somehow gets onto a lake that somehow goes to Manhattan, even though I've been to Crystal Lake and it's only an hour away from New York City, a drive. And then on top of that, he somehow gets out of the boat, finds his way to New York City, and then finds 2 people out of 12 million in the middle of Manhattan. He never really answered that. I mean, he basically just said, "Oh, those are apples and oranges."
Yeah.
Like, no, they're both slashers, and Michael Myers is the boogeyman. So we're not dealing with, we're not dealing with Mark Harmon playing Ted Bundy as a deliberate stranger. We're in a kind of weird slasher area already, because Michael Myers can learn to drive and all that kind of stuff. And so look, he didn't answer the question. He just evaded it. And so I stand by it. But then Bill went on. Basically what we call, if you've ever taken a logic class, which is a lawyer, I've had to, and yes, Bill, I've worked in law enforcement. I was a prosecutor. If you've worked in law enforcement or you've worked in any kind of legal form, you have to learn logic. One of the things they teach you in logic is there's a thing called ad hominem argument. Ad hominem argument is when you attack the person, not the argument, which is what he did. And debate coaches will tell you the moment you do that, you've lost, because you don't have a response to the argument. You're just attacking the person. So it's just a series of insults. And I didn't know horror. I didn't know what I was talking about. That when I made my 100 greatest performances in horror list, that it was horrible, even though he never addressed the top of the list. And he, said basically, because he doesn't like Get Out or Halloween 2018, that I had people on there, that kind of stuff. So look, I'm all about debate. That's the whole reason to do lists, Bill, is to debate them, have fun with them. But you don't have to attack the person, brother. You don't. You deal with the argument. You deal with the thing. You don't have to just roll your eyes and say, please. That's not an argument, man. I worked in law for a lot of years. That's not getting anywhere with a judge or jury. You have to make
Wow.
you have to make an argument, man. And so. And, he accused me of the 100 list being clickbait. No, Bill, that's what's called marketing. That's the way it
Man,
is.
I have not heard this episode that you're talking about yet, so all of this is alien to me. But hey, can I just say, Friday the 13th Part 8 is a fun movie. I don't care about the logic flaws.
Well, no, okay, fine. If you think it's just fun, and you're like, but my point was, that he didn't address, was you can't say one slasher movie is fun, but it's illogical. Another slasher movie is not fun because it's illogical.
Sure.
Okay,
Okay.
you can't that doesn't follow any plane of logic whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant by nitpicky. You can't say that all these things in Jason Takes Manhattan, and even the director himself has basically said he didn't know what he was doing and he made huge mistakes and it makes no sense. That's coming
Right.
from the director on the commentary track and Camp Crystal Lake Memories.
I think what we need is a novelization of the film to connect part 7 and part 8.
Good
You're
luck.
all about the novelizations. Let's get okay, let's get Bill to write a novelization. And
Uh,
we'll see. We'll see. Just have a polite discussion about this, and let's get him on the show to describe it. And
and explain the de-aging benefits of toxic waste flooding through a Manhattan sewer. Um, but anyway, I think Halloween 2018 is a great film. I know you do too. And so I think it made both of our top 10 lists from 2018, if
sure
I remember
did.
correctly. Yeah. And so, yeah, there are problems with it. There's problems with every movie. There's problems with Citizen Kane, for goodness sakes.
Hmm.
The nurse could not have overheard him saying Rosebud. She was in another room. Okay, but
Right.
it doesn't mean it's not a great film. Um, but I just find it odd that the funny thing was that Bill attacked me for saying, that I had this definitive list of the 100 greatest performances. And I should have said, no, these are just my favorite performances. But then Bill goes on to dismiss everyone else's opinion and state his opinion like it's fact given down, put it on a stone tablet by Moses and brought down to the Israelites. So I think that's a little hypocritical, buddy. Okay, it's fun. Look, but look, man, this should be a debate. A debate, man. We can debate, but not divide. You don't have to attack people. You don't have to be mean, rude. You don't have to be dismissive. You don't have to do any of that. And I'm writing a blog post now to respond to something that he and Lady Phantom said and even Jay agreed with. I understand where he's coming from. And we love Jay, don't we? He's a great guy.
Yes, absolutely.
We love Jay. And so I'll listen to the podcast just for Jay, if nothing else. And I'm Team Jay on that podcast. But he did say he didn't think Silence of the Lambs was a horror movie. Jay did, and they all seem to agree with that and so forth. I am writing a blog post now that says actually Silence of the Lambs 7 and so forth, I believe, are horror movies. And I'm going to back it up with some evidence. And
Hmm.
so we'll go from there. But I wanted to respond to that. But look, man, Bill, it's all in good fun, man. Calm down. Sit back, relax your crack, have a drink. It's all good, man. You don't have to be insecure about this. It's cool. People can disagree with you. It happens. So, but yeah, it's my list and I defend it. And I do believe that the performances in Get Out, the list are worthy of it because I think Get Out's the best horror movie of the last 20 years. I think it's a stunning work of genius. And Bill, I've gone to film school. And one of the people who agrees with me on this is Wolfman Josh, who's also gone to film school and is a filmmaker. And Jordan Peele is a huge horror fan. Listen to our tribute to Jordan Peele. The guy writes for Fangoria now, right? I mean, but
Wow.
Jordan Peele is a horror movie fan. And I thought it was a stunning work of genius that also managed to make an important social statement without being preachy about it. And that's hard
Hmm.
to do. Because I thought The Shape of Water was a little preachy, but I didn't think Get Out was. Do you
Hmm.
disagree with that?
No, I agree completely. But I've got to ask. You said Get Out was one of the best movies in the last. Was the best movie in the last 20 years, horror movie.
Yes.
You didn't think Annabelle Comes Home topped it? I couldn't even get that out with laughing.
Well, it was a tight race, but
Woohoo! 36%, baby.
at the end of the day, no, I'll go with Get Out. And there was a reason why almost that entire cast got Oscar buzz, man, because it was incredible. And Halloween, he attacked me because I put the kid whose name I always butcher in it, but every review I read from Dread Central to Bloody Disgust says that kid stole the show in Halloween 2018. Jamie Lee Curtis gives one of the best performances of her career, but that little kid is amazing.
Yep, he's great.
He's mesmerizing. I mean, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, so anyway, that's my response.
We love you guys over at Horror Movie Weekly, by the way. We just gotta uh I haven't heard the episode yet, but I'll be listening to it. And hey, everybody's got different opinions, and one person can dissent and the other person can, like something, but at the end of the day, somebody's right and somebody's wrong, and it's probably me.
Well, like I said, it should be just a fun debate. And Jay sent me a nice email, and I said, "Look, I got thick skin, and you know what? It should be fun. This should be fun. The whole point of doing lists and all that kind of stuff is to discuss them and debate them and all kind of stuff. but it doesn't need to get nasty. Let's just have fun with it, right? We're a big horror family. Us and a Horror Movie Weekly and Horror Movie Podcast and Land of the Creeps and all these podcasts. We're like family, and it should be a lot of fun. Don't you agree?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's move away from that and let's discuss Stephen King's It from 2017.
Look, everywhere it happens, it's all connected by the sewers. What happened?
What is that?
If we stick together, all of us will win.
Make it a wonderful day. Kill them all! Kill them all!
It, rated R, September 8th.
Jackson, what thoughts do you have on It from 2017?
I love this movie. Man, I love this movie. I've loved it ever since I saw it. I saw it in theaters, which is rare for me to see an R-rated movie in theaters originally when it comes out before his streaming services. But this movie I was fortunate enough to see. I think I actually saw opening weekend or opening week. Awesome movie. I loved it was sort of like Stranger Things in that the kid dynamic was awesome. They were cracking jokes that were actually funny, and this is how kids talk. And Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, was so scary to me that I actually checked the closet for him. I won't lie. 2017, I was checking the closet because that drooling that how he's drooling all over Eddie, and fear tastes so good. That creeped me out so much. I just love that movie, and I loved the conclusion of part 1, and I was scared that they were going to ruin it with part 2. And let me tell you, I watched it last week, and I was not disappointed. I thought it was great, and a lot of people are saying that it's way worse than the original. But back to It Chapter 1, I still think this is a fantastic movie. I mean, you can see that in my original review on Letterboxd. I was just flabbergasted by it. I have it on Blu-ray now. I've seen it. I think 4 or 5 times since its original release, and it doesn't get worse.
I do, I think the strongest thing about I didn't find it overall that scary, like the projector scene that didn't really scare me. Yeah, there are a couple like when he's sweet fear and stuff like that, and just let me say the opening scene, as you and I saw when we listened to Quentin Tarantino being interviewed, which he's mediocre on this, he's lukewarm on this movie. But even Quentin Tarantino said the opening scene is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant with Georgie. Right.
Yeah. Horrifying. When he gets his arm bitten off in the miniseries, if you'll recall, you don't get to see that. It's like a fade, and then it's discussed later. But you get to see his arm get bitten off, and that's terrifying. I was not ready to get to see a kid crawling around with the stump of an arm. It's just terrifying, and the fact that the adults do nothing about it. I mean, that's a huge theme of the book and the movie, and that's just so terrifying.
Oh yeah, and it's shot so well. I mean, let's give credit to Andy Muschietti. It is shot brilliantly. The cinematography is fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. And this movie has such a dynamic look to it. I was afraid, you know how horror movies are these days. With the exception of a few, they're usually shot really flat and kind of boring looking. But this movie, for some reason, has a vibrance to it. I can't describe it, but you really do feel, like you're in the 80s, like you're a kid in summer break over the 80s, and your summer is interrupted by this killer clown. Just imagine how terrifying that would be. This movie really places you in the shoes of these kids from Derry, and you feel like you've lived there all your life, and now this thing is intruding on your sense of safeness.
Yeah, it really is that kids in peril thing, and it's often, as Jay would say, horror in the daylight that they pull off. And so I really like that. But the main thing I like about It Chapter 1, I think its greatest strength is this may be the greatest collection of kids cast together as far as their connection and charisma, since maybe like the Goonies or Stand By Me.
I would agree with that. Or Monster Squad. Wolfman's got nards.
Or Monster Squad. That's true. I mean, yeah, you have to go back to one of those movies from the 80s where we have kids to find something where these kids have that kind of connection. They have that kind of emotional connection and that kind of charisma. And Finn Wolfhard is just incredible.
Sure. And I think the real standout here is Jack Dylan Grazer, I think his name is Eddie. He's hilarious.
Eddie is good with the mom and all that other kind of stuff. And yeah,
Right.
I do think that's good. But I will tell you who I think delivers the most underrated performance. And we'll talk more about this character later, but is the kid who plays the bully.
Yes.
That,
Yeah.
oh my,
Henry Bowers is
Henry
terrifying.
Bowers is a terrifying kid.
Yep.
And I mean, the scene with him and his father, I mean, it's
Mhm.
a spoiler podcast. That is just horrific
Yep.
and much
Like,
more effective than like when Rob Zombie does it in his Halloween. Wouldn't you
yeah.
agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I was afraid that they were gonna go a little too, white trash, like Rob Zombie's Halloween. I was afraid they were gonna have, too
What? Rob
explicit of
Zombie has white trash in his movies?
I know, so surprising. Um, but it was really understated.
A guy from Boston who constantly does white trash.
Yeah, he calls himself a Southern hillbilly, but really, he's a masshole. But anyways, yeah, Henry Bowers is terrifying. I think in the original and the movie from 2017, I think he's scary in the miniseries too. But um, definitely Nicholas Hamilton, I think is his name. He does a great job. Like he looks so dead in the eyes. It's like Bruce from Jaws.
Yeah, I really think all the kids were really good. The kid who played Ben, I mean, they all are just really stand out. I remember going to see this in the theater with our buddy Jimmy Bays, and I was walking out, and Jimmy didn't love it, but he said, "Whoever that casting director is deserves a bonus because
Yeah.
those kids are amazing." And Joe Bob Briggs has said over and over again that he loves this movie, and one of the reasons he loves it is you've got to give credit where credit is due. To do a movie of this length and this intensity with kids and pull it off, that
Yep.
alone is a I mean, right? I mean that's not easy to do.
No, it definitely isn't. And you can tell that the screenwriters, I know this was passed around from person to person. I think originally it was Cary Fukunaga.
Yep.
I don't know how to say that name. Um but I from what I've heard of his stuff, it's great. It's really scary, but eventually Chase Palmer took it over. I know this is handed down through a bunch of people, but I think a lot of this comes from the source material. And you can't if this was an original concept, I don't think it would have been as good because Stephen King's original book, that camaraderie is so strong. He knows how to write characters that you care about. And everything that really laid the foundation for everything that comes in this movie because these kids they obviously they had time to bond on set, but they had material to look at and know how their characters interacted with each other. They knew their whole backstories, and that really helps a lot when you have that material as an actor.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that they're very faithful in both this and it chapter 2 to the source material, with
Mhm.
a few notable exceptions, like Pennywise is not a space turtle in this one, thank goodness.
Well, he's not a space turtle in any of them. His nemesis is a space turtle.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right.
That's right. Yeah, you got to make sure you get the specifics about the
Uh,
giant astral turtles.
yeah, I didn't really understand that as a kid. I remember reading this when I was 14 and reading that stuff and going, is Stephen King on drugs?
Well, he was.
Well, and then years later I found out, yes, he was. That
Well, I
Stephen
think
King
it's
he was basically writing on a desk that looked like Tony's from Scarface. I
you're
mean,
right.
yeah.
To be fair, I think it's explained better in the Gunslinger books, the Dark Tower series. I think the same concept is explained better about the turtle and Pennywise, the ultimate evil. But I'm
Tur-
glad I'm glad they
Turtles
don't.
should never be in a horror movie. I'm sorry.
Sure. I'm glad they didn't touch it in these movies. I think the way they described it was pretty tasteful. The ritual of Chud or Chud. And whenever I think of Chud, I think as Joe Bob Briggs once
Oh,
pointed
of
out,
course.
I think of cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Of course.
Um, but I think the way they handled it here was a lot better. And when you find out in the chapter 2 that the ritual of Chud is kind of just a placebo, um, it doesn't actually do anything. That makes it a
No.
lot better too. Um, so yeah, I thought this movie was great. When I watched it, I was kind of like I was on a high after I watched it. I wanted to think about it all the time. I wanted to read it, and then I saw it was 1,100 pages, and I was like, no thanks.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of other Stephen King books I can finish in a month instead of I don't know, 3 years. But yeah, It Chapter 1, I think it changed the genre a little bit. Now we're seeing movies like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and they have that, those characters that are all kids and they are cracking wise and talking to each other and they're all kind of quirky. I feel like when it hit the scene, kind of changed how we look at horror movies in this modern age.
Yeah, and it's that and Stranger Things, right? That was
Sure.
kind of the 1-2 punch that I
Hmm.
think started to create this, which I hope they don't overdo, but it's Hollywood, so they will.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. They
they,
do a trend until it's dead.
yeah, they'll milk it dry. But um, so this brings me to my next question because I know that you own the original miniseries.
Hmm.
Um, Skarsgård or Curry?
This one's tough. I love them both for different reasons. I think everybody will tell you that. Skarsgård is I don't want to say that either. I was gonna say he's scarier. Yeah,
I think
okay.
he is scarier.
He's scarier. I think Tim Curry is more iconic. I think that he has more quotable lines, but that's just because he's a comedic character, essentially. Um, he's larger than life. Tim Curry is the thing you want on your lunchbox, and Skarsgård is the thing that you hope to not see under your bed, if that makes any sense.
I think that's perfectly well said. Yeah, I thought that I it is my favorite Stephen King book.
Really.
Yeah, I read it when I was a kid, loved it. I had some problems with it, but overall I loved it.
Sure.
I couldn't wait for the miniseries. I was living in LA at the time. I invited a bunch of buddies over to watch it. So we gathered around on my couch and sat there, get ready to watch it, the miniseries. And I remember being somewhat disappointed. The first half I thought was good with
Hmm.
the kids. The second half, I was distracted by the fact that you've got all these sitcom actors that I grew up watching.
And ponytail sporting
Yeah,
actors.
you've got the guy for John Boy from the Waltons has a ponytail, and then
But and
you've got
interesting to
Jack from Three's Company, and you've got Judge
sure.
Harry, and you've got Venus Flytrap, and they're all going
Yeah.
out to
Yeah.
fight Tim Curry from Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I thought that was distracting.
Hmm. He kind of plays Dr. Frankenfurter in this, doesn't he? He's in the It
Yes.
miniseries. He's very like Frankenfurter in clown makeup. But yeah, interesting to note though. The guy that played the adult Bill in the miniseries, he was sporting a ponytail. Guess who else was sporting a ponytail during that exact era?
Right.
Mr. Stephen King.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which makes the relation even stronger. I mean, of course, Stephen King writes his main characters to be him. You know, it's
Yeah.
always got to be. It's either the kid version of Stephen King or Stephen King in adult form. You've always got, oh, I'm a writer and I live in Maine and my name is Believe in Bing. Whatever
Yeah.
paper.
It's well, I mean, what he claims to him. I mean, this is going by his word. He claims he built the kids on his own kids.
Sure.
So maybe he did because he had 3 kids of his own. But I don't know. I didn't have a problem with the kids. There is one scene in the book that I'm not going to go into that was
Right.
deeply disturbing.
Yeah. None of that.
Yeah, that was really disturbing. And that and the space turtles. Other than that, I loved the book. I absolutely loved it. I was disappointed with the miniseries. I thought it was okay.
Hmm.
Tim Curry was good because he's so charismatic, but I wasn't scared by his performance.
Right.
But this is the It I was waiting to see, and I was excited. And I've seen it several times since. I think the kids are just amazing. I did think some of the CGI was a little distracting, and we'll talk
Yeah.
more about that with part 2. Um, but I still thought it was a really, really strong movie. It made my top 10 list from that year. So, what else do you want to talk about with It Chapter 1?
Um. I don't. I guess I'm just going to ask, like, as far as this goes to, like, relating to the book, is is the fact that it's fast forwarded to 1980, where the kids are in 1980 and then they're growing up in 2019, is that distracting? Does that take away from like the charm of them being in the 50s? Because when you watch the miniseries, everything's 50 style. You feel like you're in the Blob movie. Does that ruin it for you a little bit? Like the fact that they're changing it to present time when they're adults?
No, it didn't ruin it for me. I thought that was fine. I thought they did such a good job of selling the
Mm-hmm.
80s vibe in the first one.
Sure.
And I don't think, like, I've been watching American Horror Story 1984. I watched the first episode this week. It's set in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and they really push it. I mean, the hairstyles are over the top. It's all talking about aerobicize and,
Yeah.
Jane Fonda's workout tape and Duran Duran and MTV and all that kind of stuff. They push it so hard. It's fun, but it's still pushed too much. I don't think It Chapter One did that. I thought they
Sure.
let the kids be kids. Yes, it was in the 80s, but they let the kids be kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was fine. And so I was sold on it. It didn't distract me.
Okay. That's all I got to say about it chapter 1. I mean, you know where it stands, in my heart. I mean, I thought it was a great movie, still think it's a great movie to this day. I think it's a gateway sort of for maybe horror movie fans that aren't ready for other Stephen King works that might be too intense for them. Other than the first scene, I think this is a pretty widely I think it can be accepted by the general populace more so than something like, I don't know, Salem's Lot. Would you
Well,
agree?
yeah, it made a crap ton of money. So obviously,
Sure.
yeah. But
Sure. But highest grossing R-rated movie for a while, R-rated horror movie for a while, right?
yeah, I think you're right. But I would say, following off of like the last Land of the Creeps episode where they were talking about ages, I'd say 13 and up would be
Yep.
okay with this one.
Sure. I would say that the first scene is the only one that's gratuitous or graphic. I think the rest of it is pretty accessible.
Well, they do kind of imply the thing with Bev and her dad,
Sure.
which is disturbing.
But you don't see anything explicit.
No, no, nothing like in the book, thank goodness. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's in the book. There are a couple scenes that are really disturbing. So
Mhm.
let's wrap this up. What would you rate It Chapter One from 2017? What would you give it?
I'd say it's an 8 out of 10. It's a buy it.
All right, I'm a little higher than you actually.
Really?
I'm 9 out of 10.
Wow.
And I'm also going to buy it. I haven't bought it yet simply because I knew when they would make part two, they would issue a double pack with both of them with added scenes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I'm waiting on that. Probably around Christmas time, I will grab It Chapter One and Two because I know that there are a lot of scenes that Andy Muschietti cut out.
Sure.
So I can't
When are we
wait
going to
to
see
see
that
that.
baby scene?
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm not sure. I don't know if they shot it or not. I listened to the Losers Club podcast this last week, the Stephen King podcast, and they interviewed a guy who works for Vanity Fair who interviewed Anthony Muschietti and Stephen King and so forth. And so he had a lot of information on the movies and the director's cut that are coming and so forth. But he didn't say anything about all that. So we will see.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a 9 out of 10 for me, and I can't wait to have both of them, which may be a little bit of a spoiler alert. So let's move on to It Chapter 2 from 2019.
Hello. You made an oath.
If it ever comes back, we'll come back too.
Take it. It kills monsters. We believe it does.
Let's kill this clown.
It Chapter 2. Rated R.
So, Jackson, what are your initial thoughts on It Chapter 2?
Well, when I first started watching this movie, I sat down and I saw the first scene, which is terrifying. And I remember reading that excerpt from the book of when this happened. I was like, okay, they're adapting this. I did not expect it to be the first scene, like what we see first, right in your face. And I think it serves the same purpose as the Georgie scene from the 2017 movie. This is a graphic and terrifying scene, that's right in your face at the beginning to kind of warn you. And then it goes back to, kind of being tame for a while. First impressions after that, I felt it was kind of rushed in the beginning with all the character introductions. I feel like it goes from one character to another, like sort of like a montage almost.
Right.
And I don't know that I liked that. I felt like it was a little rushed and they're like, oh, this is what this character looks like now that you're introduced to them. That's their family. Okay, bye. They're going to Derry now. But over time, the movie really grew on me as I was watching it. I feel like as they had more time to develop their characters, I was like, okay, these are the adult versions of these kids that I saw in the first movie. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the casting is insane. can we agree that they look and act exactly like their young counterparts? It's kind of freaky.
Again, who is this casting director, and why is their schedule not booked for the next 20 years?
Exactly.
They're fantastic.
Hmm.
Absolutely fantastic. Even Ben, who grows up to be in shape and all this other kind of stuff, his facial structure still looks like the kid from the first one.
Exactly. Yeah, it's freaky. And when you see them side by side, I mean, it's kind of terrifying. It's like and I don't know, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh,
But yeah, it's great. And I think there's one part where it cuts in between the young cast and the older cast,
yeah.
and you're like, whoa. There's some CGI like magic going on right now. It's crazy how much they look alike, and I think the mannerisms contribute a lot to it. James McAvoy playing Bill does a great job. I think his
Do
facial.
you
Yep.
really think so?
Yep.
I had a problem with his performance.
Did you really? Because okay, here's
I
what I
didn't
think.
I didn't think it was terrible.
Hmm.
I just expect more from James McAvoy after what I've seen him deliver, whether it's been as Professor Xavier or in Split and Glass, because I think those are incredible performances. I don't care if you like those movies or not. He
Sure.
delivers incredible performances in those movies. I expect a little bit more from him. The stuttering seemed to be a little too obvious.
Okay. I'll give you this. A little bit of Hedwig from Split came through sometimes, I feel like.
Yes.
But I think he did a great job. But my favorite casting was Bill Hader as Richie,
Oh,
Finn
well, of
Wolfhard.
course.
He was perfect. I mean, I've seen them interview together, and like it couldn't be better. And I hear that Finn Wolfhard actually asked for Bill Hader to play his adult self. Bill Hader hadn't even seen the first movie before, and Finn Wolfhard was like, "Hey, Bill Hader, you're gonna play adult me." And he was like, "Okay, I guess I'm doing this." I think I heard him say that he watched It Chapter 1 on the plane ride to do the table read for It Chapter 2,
Wow.
which is kind of funny. But he does a great job. I mean, he's just perfect in this movie. I think the guy that plays Stan, for what little we see of him, I think he looks and acts exactly like the young Stan. I think he nailed it. Ben, as you said, I think he's given a lot more to work with in this movie. He was kind of I mean, I don't want to say that he had that only one thing going for him, but I feel like most of his role in the first movie was, I'm bullied and I've got a crush on Beverly. But in this movie, a lot of depth is put into him, I feel like, and the same is true with Beverly. I feel like her character is handled in a way that they didn't get the time to do in the first movie. I don't think they did it as well as the book did, from what I've read. Um, but it's handled really well. You feel like these are living, breathing people.
Yeah, I agree. I do have a couple issues there. I think that Jessica Chastain, I don't think was given enough to do because she's such an amazing actress.
Sure.
And she's just kind of the damsel in distress, where in the book she's a lot tougher.
Sure.
I didn't understand that. Also, with Stanley, they cut the best scene, man. The best scene, the creepiest scene from the miniseries is when Stanley's wife discovers him and he's written in blood after he's committed suicide.
Sure. I think that maybe.
Why did they cut that scene?
I think it's a tastefulness thing. Like they're trying to be sensitive after shows like 13 Reasons Why. I don't think they wanted to exaggerate. I think they handled it well enough.
It's a horror movie, man.
Sure.
It's a horror movie about a clown from outer space that eats children, and that's where they're going to draw the line?
I don't know. This wasn't going to be Midsummer. I can say that much.
Oh, I thought they made a mistake there. I do think, though, I agree with you about Bill Hader. I think he's perfect casting. I think him, along with Lupita Nyong'o in Us, they're my two favorite performances this year. And I can't imagine that when Horror Movie Podcast does their horror Oscars, if Bill Hader doesn't win Best Supporting Actor, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it won't be nice. It's because he is perfect. Although I think the best line in the movie, and this will bring us to grown-up Henry Bowers, is Eddie's, where he talks about the mullet.
Yeah.
Sure. I love that line.
After he's been stabbed by Henry Bowers.
He's stabbed in the mouth and he goes, "For God's sakes, cut the mullet. It's been 30 years."
Eddie, he's
love
been in
that
an
scene.
insane asylum.
I love that scene.
It's fantastic.
Oh, oh man.
Poor Eddie.
Oh, I know, poor Eddie. And can we talk about that? So,
Mm.
I had some friends tell me, because I come from an evangelical Christian background, tell me they had a problem with this, but I don't judge movies this way. Bill Hader at the end when they're in the quarry
Sure.
and he breaks down,
Mm-hmm.
that is heartbreaking.
Oh yeah, yeah. He had so much emotional depth, like I'd never seen before. You think of Bill Hader, you think of super bad. You know what I mean? You don't think of this really talented actor. He had a lot to him in this movie.
Ah, that was just heartbreak. I mean, I was tearing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get scared easily and I don't tear up easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I got scared in this movie. There are a couple of really creepy scenes in this movie.
Yes.
I mean, as forced as the scene is, can we talk about James McAvoy chasing the skateboard kid in the Hall of Mirrors?
Oh yeah. Oh, that was terrifying when Pennywise's tongue is dragging on the glass. Ugh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so amazing. And then the scene with the little girl with a birthmark. And I mean, it's
Oh.
just, and as you said, the opening scene, which is just, you're just sitting there going, good Lord, what more do these people have to go through? I mean, it's just, oh man, it's just incredible. So now let me tell you the issues I had with it. I had more issues with this one than the first one with the CGI. There were
Mhm.
times when the CGI took me out of it.
Sure.
I thought sometimes it felt patched together.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I wasn't in love with James McAvoy's performance. I thought they didn't give Jessica Chastain enough to do. I thought there were too many endings.
Yeah, yeah. It's like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, exactly. It's a perfect comparison. I said they cut the best scene, but that being said, I'm still coming in high on this because what this does right, it does so well
Mm-hmm.
that's what I love. It's kind of like Strangers Pray at Night, which is a movie that I love, and you and I visited the filming locations for that.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not a perfect movie. I know there are problems. I know that the two young leads don't give her the best performances and so forth. But man, when it is on, like the pool scene.
Definitely.
That pool scene is classic.
Mm-hmm.
It does that too. There are parts in It Chapter 2 where I am taken out of the movie. I'm a little annoyed. Unlike most people, wasn't a big fan of the Paul Bunyan thing. The Stephen King cameo was a little too long and distracting.
Really? I loved that.
I thought it was a little too long and distracting. But okay, all that being said, like I said, when it's scary, like the kids, when it does it right with Bill Hader and Eddie and Henry Bowers and the scene in the quarry, it does it so well
Mm-hmm.
that I have to give this movie a positive review.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. A lot of the problems you had with it, I didn't have with it. I do agree that it felt very patched together in some scenes. I do agree that Jessica Chastain didn't have a lot to do. Although when she was on screen, I thought she was powerful enough.
Well, but there's a scene like with her in a slingshot in the book and stuff like that, and they just
Mhm.
don't give her that.
Sure.
And I just wish they would have given her more because she is such a strong actress.
Mm-hmm.
And do
Yeah.
you know that the actress who played James McAvoy's wife near the beginning, that was Jessica Chastain's roommate for years when they were both starting in Hollywood.
Really?
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah, yeah. And here's another. You want an Easter egg? Let's see if you
Sure.
can catch this. Okay. When they have a scene with Mike in the library, which
Mhm.
I also don't think they gave Mike enough to do. He seemed kind of a weak character to me. I
Really?
would,
I thought he
yeah,
was a lot stronger in this movie than he was in the last one.
I don't know. He was more professorial in the first one, and I'm not sure that was the right tone either. But um, for a guy who's stuck in around Derry just waiting for a homicidal space alien clown to come back, I mean, I think
Mhm.
he should have been stronger, in my opinion. But
Okay.
um, if you looked around the library, there was a nameplate of another librarian. Did you catch the nameplate?
No, I didn't.
Wendy Torrance.
Oh. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
The Shining into this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Stephen King likes to bring together his universe, right? That's what Castle Rock's all about.
So are you saying
Um,
that Wendy is a librarian?
Apparently, Wendy is a librarian in Derry, Maine after leaving Colorado. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So Danny's somewhere in that town. Are we gonna see in the new movie coming out, Doctor Sleep? Are we gonna see Bill Hader walking around cracking
I don't
jokes?
know. I doubt it, but I don't know. But I do look forward to seeing that. I hated the book, but I do think
Sure.
that I trust the director to do something cool with it. So,
Mhm.
what else do you want to hit about It Chapter 2?
Yeah, I can agree with one thing you said, which is that CGI is just so prevalent in this movie. The creatures, the fortune cookie creatures in the Chinese
Oh, I
restaurant,
hated that.
I could have done without that. I know it's in the book, or something along those lines is in the book, and I think there was one good thing that came out of that scene, which was Bill Hader smashing the table with a, or no, that was actually Ben, wasn't it? Or no, that was, I guess that was Mike. I don't know. One of the characters is smashing the table with a chair, and when the waitress walks in, she sees like
Yeah,
nothing.
we'll take a sec.
Yeah. Yep. Um, yeah, that was perfect. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of CGI in this, and I think they repeated some of the same sins as the first movie with the jerky, like teleporting towards the camera, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I didn't
I don't
like
really
that.
think that's scary. I do like Pennywise's final form more than the miniseries. I think I liked the half clown, half spider more than
Oh, well,
the full out.
anything could be better than the spider in the miniseries. I mean,
Sure, where they
that
just
was
kind of
awful.
they just kind of flip the spider over and tear its heart out. I think this was a better conclusion. I like how Pennywise shrinks into this tiny like puddle of clown. I thought that was fantastic. He looks so
Uh,
pitiful.
the
Um,
pancake Pennywise.
yeah, I liked that. I loved Bill Skarsgård's like little face on this puddle of clown as he's pitiful. He's like fear. It's so fantastic. But yeah, there were way too many endings in this. It ends and I'm like, "Oh, that was a nice ending." Oh, and then Bill's writing a book and he gets a call from Mike. Okay, is it over now? Oh wait, no. Now you see Beverly and Ben on the boat and you're like, "Okay, when is this going to end?" It's got so many endings. It's like
Did we need the letter from Stanley?
I I don't know, but I feel like they were guilty because they didn't have much to do in this movie. They casted what seems to be a great actor to play Stanley. I've seen him in interviews, and he looks and acts exactly like the young Stanley Wyatt. I don't, what is his name? Wyatt Olaf, I think.
Hmm.
I feel like they felt guilty, so they wanted to give him a bigger role because if you'll recall in the book, I think, and the miniseries, it cuts in between, the kids and the adults to
Yeah.
give more depth to the characters, and this one it decided to stick mostly to the adults. But yeah, so that's the reason they did that. I don't think it was necessary. I think it's a Psycho instance with the therapist describing like what's going on with Norman Bates. I feel like they needed something to conclude the movie and give it a triumphant end, so they had Stanley write a letter. I didn't care for that. I didn't care for the ending with the characters as much as the end of Pennywise. But the rest of the movie was just like so many ups and downs. The heartbreak that these characters go through as they confront their fears. I feel like that was the best part of the movie, is seeing these characters confront what makes them scared and like admitting that they're not perfect, but that they aren't scared of Pennywise anymore. And that really like takes away his power. I think that's awesome. Um, the kids give a good performance in what parts they have in the movie. They're kind of minimized. They probably only have like, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes of screen time in this 2.5 hour movie, 2 hours and 50 minutes,
Right.
whatever it is. But I still think that they gave, and I think most of that is because they're aging, and there's only so much you can do. I know
Well,
they did CGI work on them.
yeah, they de-aged them by CGI. I heard a lot of people complaining about that on other podcasts. I didn't notice it. Did you?
I noticed it a little bit with Finn Wolfhard. With the rest of them, I think I noticed Eddie had a little bit of work done to his voice. I could hear a little bit of a pitch
They
shift.
did. They did have voice actors come in. Yeah.
I could hear his voice. It seemed a little off, but it didn't bother me. Once I stopped thinking about it, it didn't bother me. Like in the scene where they're in the shed, which was never mentioned in the first movie or whatever. Their hangout spot under the ground. Uh, I didn't really mind it. That's what I'm getting at. But I don't think this movie is any less scary than the first movie. People are saying that it's because it's not from the kid's perspective anymore, so this grown man isn't as scary. This clown. But I think it's just as scary. That scene where like you said, the kid with the birthmark goes into the bleachers, and Pennywise is like, "I just need a friend. People make fun of me for the way I look." I was like, "Aw," and then he chomped her head, like he does with the kid in the fun house, which was really disturbing. I mean, they go there in the series. They're not afraid to show child death, which I think takes a lot of balls to do in a movie.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I didn't like it as much as the first one, but just marginally. I think that this one won't have as much rewatch value because it's so long. But for watching it just once, I mean, this is an epic. Like it's length. I don't think there's a lot of filler in this movie. I just think that that's how Stephen King books are. If you want to adapt it well, you've got to have long movies. So overall, barely weaker than the first movie, I would say. I'm ready to rate this if you don't have anything else to say.
Hey, go for it, buddy. What do you rate it?
This, for me, if you'll recall, my last one was an 8 out of 10. This is a 7.5 out of 10, but I would liken it more to a 7.75 because I just barely like it. The pacing and the ending. That's the only thing that's really wrong with this movie that the first movie didn't have. But yeah, I would recommend this also as a buy just to see the two movies together in this big scale epic, longer than the miniseries. We get to see everything we wanted. I would recommend this as a buy. I'm interested to see what was cut from this movie since it's so long. I want to see, what didn't make it. But yeah, this is a buy. 7.75 out of 10.
All right. Well, I am right there with you. It's a 7.5 out of 10 for me. I saw it in the theater. I don't regret it. The length didn't really bother me. I didn't really notice that I was sitting there for 3 hours. And when we saw Midsummer together, I did. But with this one, even though I think Midsummer is a better movie, I didn't notice it. And so it's a 7.5. I'm going to buy it when it comes out, and I look forward to seeing it and the deleted scenes. And darn it, everybody out there doing horror awards, Bill Hader deserves Best Supporting Actor for this role. It is the role of a lifetime. He's amazing in it. He's just fantastic. And so, yeah, I can, man, if they just cleaned up some of the CGI and they tightened it up a little bit, like, I don't think we needed the whole go get your tokens or totems or whatever, that kind of thing.
No.
If they would have cut a lot of that stuff out of there and they would have made this like a 2, even 2.5, I'm just talking about 15, 20 minutes cut out of it and focused more on that, I think this could have been just as good as the first one. Looking at what's coming out and so forth, I doubt this is going to make my top 10 list, but it might. It might make the bottom of my top 10 list. It could very well make my honorable mentions because I still think, like I said, what works so well that I think that's what makes it worth it. So that's what we have for It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. We have little house cleaning things to do here. Haddonfield Hatchett was supposed to be with us. He couldn't make it because of a family thing, but Haddonfield, Sean Davis, if you don't know, he is got a GoFundMe page or an Indiegogo, I can't remember which one, raising money for his bar prep because he's graduating from law school soon and you're ready to prepare for the bar. I can tell you as a licensed attorney, that stuff is expensive. Help him out. I threw him some bucks. You should do the same. He's a good guy. Greg Bench will be on with us again. He couldn't make it, but he'll be on with us again. And we want, listeners to be on. We know Ian West is going to be on at some point. We have some others who are going to be on. If you're interested, if you're out there listening, and according to Apple iTunes, there are about 7,000 of you, which blows our mind. But if you want to be on, just shoot us a message on Twitter or send us an email and at our website, fatherandsonwatchhorror.com. And we'd love to have you on, wouldn't we, buddy?
Yes, absolutely. Guests always make it more interesting because we don't really know what we're talking about.
So you're just feeding right into Bill Chete's ego right
Sure.
there.
I mean, I got to make peace somehow.
Well, Jay of the Dead will make peace because he's such a good guy. So, buddy, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, on Twitter, I'm at Kane_Hero12. That's KAINE_Hero12. On Letterboxd, I'm at Kane Hero, no spaces, same spelling. Been posting a lot of movies, on Letterboxd, a lot of reviews. So if you want to see what I'm watching and what will possibly be appearing in podcasts in the future, that's where you can find it. Also, I've got a YouTube channel, which is linked in the bio of both of those websites.
Good deal. And so you can find me at Pastor Matt R on Twitter and Letterboxd. Like I said, we can check out our website, fatherandsonwatchhorror.com. And we also have a Twitter account. And we have a closed Facebook group as well, which you can petition to join. So please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We appreciate a 5-star review. And again, we've got a giveaway going. I've got a tumbler from my trip to Camp Crystal Lake, which is a red tumbler, blood red, of course, Crystal Lake Tours. I've also got a notebook and pen from Camp Crystal Lake. For 2 people, I'm going to do that. All you have to do is rate and review our podcast, subscribe, rate, and review. If you do that, you're entered. We have about 14 or 15 people entered now. If you've already done it, you're entered. What will happen is sometime this week, I'll send a message to Jackson and say, give me a number between 1 and whatever. And then I'll just go to the reviews and I will pick that number and we will ship it out to you and free of charge. So that's where we're going. What do we got coming up, buddy? Where are you looking to go? I know there are 2 things I'd like to review over the next month or 2. We're coming up on anniversaries for both the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Ooh, interesting. I just recently watched Nightmare on Elm Street recently, actually. So maybe
we may need to do that.
Yeah, maybe that's providential.
So if there's folks out there that would like to talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is currently streaming on Shudder, and Nightmare on Elm Street, which I think is also currently streaming on Shudder, isn't it?
Wow.
And
yeah,
so,
it might be. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think they both are. So you can watch both of those on Shudder and come on and jabber with us for an hour about it if you'd like. And I can give you my not very long-winded but weird theory about how Tobe Hooper based part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the Nixon administration. So,
I'd love to hear that.
Yep, we'll be going that route. So, all right, buddy. Well, say good night to the good people and we'll wrap it up.
Sure. Good night, and remember, you'll float too.
I don't want to float. All right, guys. Catch you next time. And remember, the family that watches horror movies together stays together. Take care. We appreciate it.